What's going on, YouTube? Time for another Magic Man review. This book was given to me by one of the viewers. Thank you very much. And it's called The Great Cat Massacre. It's by Robert Darnton. This book really gets into French culture before the French Revolution, and I gotta tell you, it's hysterical. The first part of this book is just hysterical. When they start getting into the fairy tales, the peasants told each other. I mean, utterly ridiculous, the stuff. And the fairy tales they told each other, just horrible fairy tales. Used to scare the crap out of their kids. Oh, you've got to read this book just for the fairy tales alone. Like the original Little Red Riding Hood. Yeah, the original one. She didn't have the Riding Hood in the first one. Okay, in the original, and it was just absolutely hysterical. Um, the big bad wolf kills grandma, fillets her up, drains her blood, and Little Red Riding Hood, he feeds her grandma to her, and and a cat comes around the corner and tells her, what did she tell her? Oh, she told Little Red Riding Hood she was a slut for eating her grandma and drinking her grandma's blood. I'm like, what? What in the world are these people going on? It's just crazy. The best parts of it were kind of like the peasant stuff, and reading it's just like a Mighty Python skit. It's like, what in the world? And the illustrations alone are great. Look, I got one here. I'm gonna show it to you. Now this is Little Red Riding Hood in bed with the big bad wolf, and the original one had some sexual connotations to it. It was like, he's like, well, throw off all your clothes in the fire because you're not going to need them anymore, and jump into bed with grandma. And in the end, the big bad wolf eats her, and it was the end. The forester doesn't come to save her. The lumberjack doesn't come to save her and grandma. No, grandma and Little Red Riding Hood both get eaten by the big bad wolf. The end. It was great. These people just, I don't know. I guess they love tormenting their children. I mean, what's up with that? But hey, they're peasants. A lot of the fairy tales and a lot of the things they told each other back in the day were a reflection of their society. And this is really what this book is really about. It's reflecting upon the different aspects of French society by the records they kept, by the letters, stuff in the newspapers, the fairy tales, accounting of what they had to say about themselves and their own society, and how they really thought about things, how they viewed the world, and that's where it's really good. This book is really going to. It's not just about great cat massacres, which was funny too. It was, oh my god, the things that these people did. It's like, they had a whole bunch of holdover. I mean, I don't want to say that it wasn't medieval France, but they still had like a sort of kind of like holdover. What's this guy doing? They had holdover superstitious crap. Don't hit me, bro. They had a whole bunch of holdover superstitious crap from the medieval periods where they thought that cats engaged in witchcraft, and they would go out and they would kill cats. And this wasn't just in France. This was a European thing. They would go out during Mardi Gras and get cats and put them in bags, and they would find the guy who was being cuckolded by his wife, and they would put the cat in a bag, put it on a stick, and set it on fire and hold it outside this guy's window. And the German word for it was called Katzenmusik, cat music. I'm like, who does that? I mean, one is just cruelty to animals. I mean, whether you like cats or not. Come on, man, you setting cats on fire, man, just so you can put it under some guy's window and make a terrible cat scream. It's just crazy. And they thought cats engaged in witchcraft, and they were evil, and they had all kinds of little spells and remedies they can make out of cat's blood and cat crap and cat urine and all kinds of crazy nonsense. And like I said, it's like a weird Monty Python skit. It's like truth is stranger than fiction. You know, you really have to roll with that. Truth really is stranger than fiction. Especially, I mean, when you read stuff like this, I'm like, what in the hell? It was great. It was great. The illustrations alone are funny. Here's another one I want to show you. This is one of their episodes. I don't know what they're doing to these poor animals, man. What they're hunting down animals, stray animals. And look, if you can see it, there's a whole bunch of dudes sticking an arrow up a dog's butt. I'm like, why? Why are you doing this poor dog, man? Sticking an arrow up his booty butt. Why? But you have to, I mean, these people were super superstitious. I mean, well, they were superstitious. Just really, it's like, it's kind of hard for today's society to really relate to that, because they have a different mindset. They lived in different times, you know. They were still living within a feudal society. You know, they still had a king. You know, Louis, I forget which one it was. Louis the, 14th, 15th, whatever. But they still had a king. They had nobility. Another one of the things that I really liked about his book was it kind of puts Marxist theory. It shines a light on the BS of Karl Marx, because it goes into the bourgeoisie up in here, and this was the same kind of thing last time. The French Revolution book that I did, the review. These authors, you can tell they have a collectivist mindset. Most of these, academics do. Okay. But they went back and searched for this mysterious bourgeoisie. But it existed. But not the way that Karl Marx made it out to be, especially in France. Okay. Most people, the high upper class, most of them were the royalty to begin with, the educated ones. Okay. They were either royalty, or they were the merchants. And the merchants and the factory owners, their whole goal was to get as much money as they could, so they could get out of that, so they could buy land and become renters. Once somebody owns something like a textile factory or something like that, or a small factory, they would, after they have got enough land to where they could live off the rent, they would sell it. They would sell their their textile factory, because they didn't want to be, because that was considered dirty and beneath. A gentleman didn't work for money. He got money, sent to him. A gentleman doesn't work with his hands. That's where the real term comes from. I see how it's been twisted today, like how words progress. Like when you go say ladies and gentlemen when you're going to the bathroom. Gentlemen don't work with their hands. A lady doesn't work. She's tended to. All right, so words change over time, but that's what it originally meant. The merchants would get enough money so they could buy land and become renters, and they would also buy titles so they could become gentlemen. And there were certain restrictions on it. You have to have money of like generation after generation after generation, 2 or 3 generations. Then you could be considered a nobleman. You could buy into it though. It wasn't something that had to be handed down to your son because you actually fought. That was kind of gone. There weren't really that many really lords or marquises that actually went out and fought. There were some, yeah, like Lafayette. He went out and fought. But that's a different story. That's kind of like a holdover from the medieval period. And it kind of disappears late, as you progress in history. But not to get too sidetracked, but yeah, Marx, I'm not going to get really into the socialism aspect of, the critique of Marxism and a lot of stuff he just made made up out of, out of thin air, or just kind of twisted things for his own vision of the world. But it gets into that. It's like they went looking for him, they couldn't find him. Started strong, kind of finished weak. I gotta tell you, it starts getting into the more intellectual parts of it. They went to the peasants first, which was outstanding. It was a rip. It really was. But as you start getting into more of the, they start going up, into the hierarchy of French society. So they went into like a policeman's. The policemen were watching everybody. Found out what kind of people. They were spying on everybody. It didn't matter who you were. The police were spying on you. And if they perceived you to be against the king or against the nobility, exiled, or they sent you to the Bastille, where they would torture you and try to find out what you were really up to. I'm not gonna get too much into it, but some of the last part of it was like an intellectual, stuff with Marxism, socialism, and how they were, how this stuff was progressing. And it was boring. I've already delved into that stuff before, and a lot of it's just when you talk about the social aspects or the social theory, not what really happened, but what they perceive to have happened. That's just, come on, dude. People, they make stuff up. They really do. It's like, oh, this is what happened, and this is why this happened back in the day. So now this is why society the way it is. And you go back and you look at the history. I'm like, you're full of crap, dude. It didn't happen the way you say it did. You're just making that stuff up to advance your own point of view. And everybody's got their own point of view. We all do it, But to make up stuff, one of the things I really got out of this book, and what I learned from this book. Every book I learned a little something from. French society was really cutthroat. All societies are kind of cutthroat, but this was live or die. And it was societal wide. And they had this view, if you were a fool, then you deserved to get taken advantage of you. There was a saying, and I kind of relate to this: better a knave than a fool. And a knave is for some of the people who don't know, a knave is kind of like the blackjack. He's kind of like a trickster. He's very clever. It's better to be a clever kind of person, almost not so much a cheat, but be able to flip the script on somebody. And most of their fairy tales were like that, like Jack and the Beanstalk. It was kind of the little guy against the big, powerful guy, fighting authority, and they had to disguise it because you couldn't be against the king. So they kind of used euphemisms. Instead of a king, you had a giant, And some of the stuff is straight up effed up. They have some stuff, there's some anti-Semitic stuff in here too. I'm not going to get into that. You're going to have to read it for yourself. We're talking about, 1700s in Europe, okay? It was there. But it was a good read. I enjoyed it. This book, put it up for you again, The Great Cat Massacre. This book is really, it would be better off if you read this book before you read the history of the French Revolution. Because this really gives you an insight to how people thought about, how they thought back then. How their mindset was. So you read this book, and you're like, okay, this is what's going on with these guys. This is how their worldview is shaped. They hated they hated the church. Everybody hated the church because they were kind of like trust fund kids. They really didn't do anything except get laid and get drunk and just get rent from people. Except for like the parish priests, the regular parish priests who go out and try to help people. The rest of them, like the bishops, and they were just living off living off the fat of the land, and everybody hated their guts. I didn't understand why the French during the Revolution why they went after their church so much. Now I understand why. Everybody hated their guts, and rightly so. They're good for nothing, really. And don't hey, before you come at me, it's like, oh, he hates Christianity, blah blah blah. Read the book. Read the book and see, that's in there, okay? But yeah, it's better to read this book first before you read A History of the French Revolution. All right, one more time. The Great Cat Massacre by Robert Darnton. All right, till next time, take it easy, folks.